Imagine being subjected to excessively long periods of isolation, mundane views, and a strict diet that consisted of the same food every single day. This is a life that these types of prisoners have to endure. However, they did nothing to deserve the punishment that is their captivity. Orcas at Seaworld are suffering every day because of the unnatural environment they are confined to, which in turn has severe consequences on the physical and mental health of these animals. In this speech, I will explain how the captivity of these animals is the direct cause of their deteriorating health and violent behavior, all for the profit of SeaWorld. First, I would like to discuss what the environment of holding pens of the orcas is like. At SeaWorld, orcas spend the majority of their time immobile, sitting in holding pens for over 12 hours at a time. These concrete pens are relatively the size of to that of a bathtub to humans. In the wild, orcas are known to swim up to approximately 100 miles a day swimming and hunting for fish, which would equal to about 1,208 laps around these pens. The conditions of these pens is very dark and cramped, with no real freedom or stimulation for over 12 hours at a time. These orcas are also known to bite on the bars of their pens, which wears their teeth down to small nub and makes it difficult for them to eat whole fish. In addition, many orcas harm themselves and even cause death by ramming their heads into the walls of their pens when they become agitated. For example, in 1991, there were 2 orca deaths that were essentially swept under the rug by SeaWorld officials because they revealed major health consequences that their captivity had caused. Kahana, a female, rammed her head into the wall of the holding pen repeatedly, eventually causing cerebral hemorrhaging because of the agony her intestinal tumor was causing her, which is a disease that is unique only to captive orcas. Another orca named Kinu was treated for a tooth infection, again only an illness that is unique to captive orcas, caused by her chewing on the bars of the tank, which ended up spreading to the rest of her body and caused multi-system organ failure. Overall, these living conditions compromise the health and well-being of these animals. Orcas are one of the most social animals and surround themselves with family throughout their whole lifespan. In the wild, they live in tight matrilineal pods that consist of grandmothers, mothers, aunts, uncles, cousins, brothers, and sisters. They also communicate with their pod with a collection of high-pitched noises that scientists consider to be almost like human language. In captivity, orcas are mostly kept isolated from each other because whales in this environment can often become violent and harm each other. This is due to the fact that whales from all over the globe are simply lumped together into the same pool and expected to bond when they essentially speak completely different languages. This causes increased anxiety and tension between these animals that often results in fighting. However, unlike in the wild, there is essentially no place for these animals to run when they are attacked. In addition, it is a common practice that baby orcas are separated from their mothers at a very young age and sold off to different parks, sometimes even across the country. This is an extremely traumatic event for both the mother and the baby, and there are recorded instances where the mother will fall into a deep depression and emit specified high-pitched sounds meant for long-distance range, looking for their babies. Not only do these animals become deprived of social interaction that they crave, they also die much younger in captivity than in the wild. It has been documented since the 1980s that orca females in the wild can live almost over 100 years old, while orca males can live almost over 70 years old. However, in captivity, the average life expectancy for both male and female orcas is only 13 years old. This is because of many reasons, perhaps the most significant being the great amount of stress this type of environment puts on the minds and bodies of these animals. A prime example of the direct effect that stress causes on these orcas is the collapsed dorsal fin, which has perhaps become the symbol of deteriorating health for these animals. The dorsal fin collapses because the tissue within the fin atrophies and essentially dies, which makes the fin lose its firmness and therefore causes it to flop onto its side. Although SeaWorld officials have claimed that there is no correlation between a collapsed dorsal fin and the health and wellness of the animal, it is a very strange coincidence that all the male orcas at SeaWorld have collapsed dorsal fins, while less than 1% of orcas have this collapsed dorsal fin in the wild. The true reason why this phenomenon occurs is still under speculation, but many scientists believe it is due to the fact that they are forced to live in shallow pools that forces them to stay floating on the top. In addition, some also speculate that their diet of thawed fish plays a role, as they hunt fresh, alive fish in the wild. And this is my visual. As you can see, I got it off the missionblue.org, and this is actually a picture of one of the whales at SeaWorld coming onto a shallow end for a trick, and you could see the fin is flopped over to the side, whereas in the wild it would be upright, making a triangle shape. The captivity of orcas at SeaWorld not only has a negative effect on orcas themselves, but also it has been proven especially dangerous to the trainers as well. Before trainers started working with orcas at SeaWorld and other parks like it, there were no reported deaths of humans by killer whales in the wild. There is still to this day no reported deaths by wild orcas. However, one deadly orca is responsible for over 3 deaths in the past 30 years. His name is Tilikum, and he was first introduced into the business in 1983 when he was ripped from his mother and pod at the young age of 2 years old. After once swimming in open seas throughout the Pacific Ocean, he was crammed into a small tank where there was only enough space for him to float. Being younger than the other whales and also being a male, in a species where females are the dominant sex, he was relentlessly bullied and attacked and injured by the other orcas. Many marine scientists believe that this caused some degree of permanent damage to his mental state, which is the cause for his dangerous and unstable behavior. On February 21st in 1991, a trainer by the name of Kelty Byrne slipped and fell into the containment where Tilikum and 2 other female orcas were swimming. Tilikum then grabbed Kelty by the foot and repeatedly pulled her to the bottom of the pool and also tossed her between the 2 other orcas, ultimately drowning her. After this unfortunate event, Sealand closed its doors and Tilikum was immediately bought by SeaWorld for breeding purposes, where the trainers were unaware of his past. According to the online article, Tilikum's tragic story, gotten off the website of PETA, it is estimated that over 54% of the orcas performing at SeaWorld today are direct descendants of Tilikum. Tilikum claimed his next victim in 1999 when Daniel Dukes, who was not a trainer nor affiliated with the SeaWorld organization, made the decision to sneak into the park at night and jump into Tilikum's holding pool, where he was found dead the next following morning, floating face down in Tilikum's pool. Even after this incident, Tilikum was still used in performances and interacted on a daily basis with the trainers. Finally, on February 24th in 2010, Dawn Branchow was performing a trick with Tilikum when he grabbed a hold of her arm and pulled her beneath the surface. Even after she was dead, it took 2 hours for authorities to retrieve her body because he would not let go of her. To this day, Tilikum is still performing at SeaWorld. In the summer of 2013, an American documentary directed by Gabriella Cowperthwaite was released called Blackfish. This documentary was quickly swept up in the media and as it exposed the unjust treatment of the orcas at SeaWorld that had ultimately led to the death of multiple trainers and injuries to 100 more. SeaWorld faced a serious amount of backlash after the release of this documentary, which included a loss in sponsors, drop in stock prices, and multiple petitions calling for it to empty its orca tanks. As you can see, SeaWorld's treatment of orcas is a serious form of animal abuse, and orcas are suffering every day in many different forms. Putting these animals in this type of environment not only makes them dangerous to themselves, but a threat to their trainers, who are unknowingly putting themselves at a great risk. The only viable option to stop this abuse is to rehabilitate the remaining whales back into the wild and to stop exploiting the suffering of these animals for a profit.